Welcome to the AI Queens podcast, the show where women entrepreneurs learn to ditch the overwhelm, embrace AI, and build businesses fit for royalty. I'm Erika Stanley, your host and tech expert, here to deliver tools, tips, and actionable strategies to help you scale smarter. Let's get to it.
Hey there, and welcome back to AI Queens, where we take women entrepreneurs from AI curious to confident. I'm Erika Stanley, and today we're talking about something that might make you question everything you've ever asked ChatGPT. Let's start with a story. So my husband was not into AI at all until recently. I introduced him to ChatGPT and showed him how to use it for a few things. We were dealing with some tenant issues with our rental house, and we needed a professional way to word a letter. Otherwise, might have been super emotional. He'd also seen me using it to help troubleshoot a few things around the house. Or last Thanksgiving, we put together a budget-friendly Thanksgiving menu for a few very diet-specific people. By the way, if you're vegan, gluten-free, or you're working towards a specific macro count, ChatGPT is awesome for that. He lovingly refers to ChatGPT as, quote, the robots. There may or may not have been some rum involved with this next encounter. He walked into the living room this weekend and recounted for me how he had gotten into a fight with the robots. Basically, he was using ChatGPT to compare the popularity of different pop stars, including Madonna versus Michael Jackson, Britney versus Christina, and of course, the popularity of one Miss Taylor Allison Swift. And he was very upset with the robot because when he tried comparing Taylor Swift to Madonna, he ended up going down the Taylor Swift rabbit hole, and it started to tell him facts about Taylor that were totally untrue. For example, it claimed that Taylor had won the Grammy for Album of the Year for her album Tortured Poets Department and had not won for her previous album Midnights. However, as any good Swiftie knows, the reverse is true. Midnights won the Grammy for Album of the Year, and Tortured Poets Department was totally snubbed by the Grammys. Now, Taylor facts aside, this is actually something that happens a lot with AI, and they're called hallucinations. First, let's talk about what hallucinations actually are. In human terms, a hallucination is seeing or hearing something that isn't real. In AI terms, it means it's generating an output that sounds plausible but is factually wrong, made up, or completely irrelevant. Now, here's why this matters to your business. If you're using AI to research your industry, write client proposals, or create content, and you don't know how to spot these lies, you could be putting your professional credibility on the line. While your competitors are blindly trusting AI, you, after this episode, are going to know exactly when to verify. Let's go into why this happens. Think of an AI model as a person who has read an enormous number of books and articles on every topic imaginable, but they've never left the library. They've learned how to connect ideas, how to structure arguments, and how to use formal language. So when you ask it a question, it's trained to provide a response that sounds intelligent and authoritative. However, because it's never verified the information in the real world, it might invent a detail or blend two different facts together to create a convincing answer, even when that answer is totally wrong. So here's what's happening. LLMs, like ChatGPT, are trained on massive amounts of text. They learn patterns. Not facts, not logic, just patterns. There's no built-in truth detector. The model doesn't know what's actually real. It just knows what looks like a good next word based on probability. So this gets a little in the weeds, but they do store representations of factual information. For example, like the capital of France is Paris. But that's not the same as how humans know things or how databases store things. It's a whole lot messier and based on complex algorithms and probabilities. So they're overconfident by design. LLMs, these large language models, which is ChatGPT, Claude, Google Gemini, all of the typing language-based AIs that we're used to, they are trained to sound helpful, clear, and confident. So even when it's pulling stuff from the depths of its neural nonsense, it says it like it's gospel. It won't say, I'm not sure, unless it's been specifically trained to do that. But that's difficult to do. I have tried to program this into my husband's custom instructions in his own ChatGPT. So if you don't know the answer, don't make something up. But even with that in his custom instructions, he still gets nonsense sometimes, which is totally frustrating. And when it gets something as simple as a Grammy winner wrong, it calls into question everything else you've asked it. Was it right when I asked it to help me with my Hemingway book report last week? My guess is that it's pretty close, but when I asked it about Hemingway's relationship to George Orwell, it very confidently told me that the two were friends, having served together during the Spanish Civil War. So I wasn't sure about this. I did a bit more research using Perplexity, which automatically finds sources, and we're going to go into that later. And it found that these two guys were, in fact, not friends. They might have met once, but even that's up for speculation since Hemingway is known to, we'll say, confidently exaggerate things. Sound familiar? Anyway, so yes, the LLMs you're using are like the book smart kid in high school. They sound like they know everything. They're going to very confidently tell you that actually, scientifically, the sky is in fact purple. And here's why. And then they're going to go into the different color wavelengths and make a very convincing argument that has you questioning the literal color of the sky. And maybe they would run circles around you in a game of Jeopardy. But knowing a bunch of trivia and actually understanding and knowing things, that's two different skill sets. There's the book smart kids and the common sense kids who learned through doing. And that's where your unique skill set, your expertise, your point of view that's rooted in the real world and in your real world experience, that's where it sets you apart from the robots. And I mean, this is exactly why in my Brand to Bot Blueprint, we always start with getting crystal clear on your expertise and voice before we even touch AI tools. So there are a few famous examples, aside from my husband's issues with the robots getting Taylor Swift's Grammy count wrong. And I just want to share some of these with you because they're a little funny. And just also so you know that it's not just you and it's causing a bigger problem than just Taylor Swift, right? So a few years ago, so this was back in 2023, there was a lawyer that tried a case citing 6 different cases as precedent. So he's up there, he's standing in front of the judge, giving these cases as precedent. The judge could not find any of those cases. It turns out all of them were completely fabricated by AI. Now, this specific instance has prompted several US judges to ban the submission of AI-generated filings unless they are strictly reviewed by humans first. And this isn't the only time. There has also been an uptick in judges reporting that they're seeing AI-drafted briefs containing references to cases, articles, and statutes that don't freaking exist. So one firm, after a judge found several different hallucinations in the same document, they were fined $31,000 for submitting filings full of AI-generated inaccuracies. So here's another example. When Google first released its AI, it was just really bad. There were a ton of screenshots of it giving ridiculous answers, one of which told people that the best way to keep your cheese from sliding off of your pizza was to use glue. I mean, it's funny, but it's also dangerous. Obviously, we know not to put glue on a pizza, but what if you're preparing a meal for a friend with a very specific allergy, and then AI gets those ingredients wrong and hallucinates a recipe that could send them into anaphylactic shock? So just like I've said before, it's trust yet verify with these tools. One more example, and I absolutely love this one. Last year, a professor at Texas A&M gave his entire class Fs on their final papers. But what he had done is he ran their essays through ChatGPT and asked, "Did you write this paper?" And ChatGPT basically responded, "Yeah, with the right prompt, I could have written this." And he did this with each essay and got similar responses each time. And so he failed them all, telling the class, quote, "I don't grade AI bullshit." Now, it turns out that this was a complete hallucination. ChatGPT had no idea, and so it told him what he wanted to hear. Funny enough, one of his own students, when making his case to the dean to get all of this reversed, ran the professor's PhD dissertation through ChatGPT asking the same thing. Did you write this? And he got the same response. Yep, the professor definitely used ChatGPT to write that paper, which he obviously couldn't have because when he wrote that paper, ChatGPT didn't even exist. So it just goes to show that you have to be careful. Now, let's talk about another frustration with these LLMs like Claude and ChatGPT. They're really bad at counting, math, word length, despite sounding like they've got PhDs and everything. So at their core, large language models are not calculators. They're token predictor machines. LLMs, they're designed to predict the next word or token in a sequence based on what comes before it. So when you ask something like, what's 2 plus 2? It knows that the next probable response is 4 because it's seen 2 plus 2 equals 4 written out a zillion times. But if you ask it, what's 13 plus 37 plus 72? It might not know the answer because it might not have seen that particular sequence of numbers put together. And unfortunately, it's going to give you an answer anyway. And it's going to do so confidently with a green check mark or a rocket ship emoji to let you know that it absolutely knows what it's talking about, even when it doesn't. Another example, it's really bad at word count. So those of you that remember writing papers in high school where you had to hit a specific word count, we knew exactly where that counter was in the menu on Microsoft Word. And if you're anything like me, you were checking that puppy like every 3 minutes to see if you had enough to call it a night. But AI is really bad at counting words and counting characters. That's because LLMs don't see words as individual units made of letters or numbers as values. Instead, they break down text into what's called tokens, which can be a whole word like hello, or part of a word like ing at the end of a word, or sometimes even a single character. Now, when asked to count words in a sentence, an LLM, it's not really counting the individual words. It's trying to predict a plausible number based on the statistical patterns it's learned in its training data. The number it provides, it's just a guess, not a precise calculation. The word strawberry, for example, might be split into 2 or 3 tokens. So when you ask, how many R's are in the word strawberry? The model, it doesn't even see that as individual letters. It sees token chunks. This makes letter and word counting super unreliable and also super frustrating. So long story short, LLMs like ChatGPT are trained for language, not for math. That's why they're called large language models. But it is getting better. There's different tools being built into these newer models for coding, advanced data analysis, and then there's the ability to connect calculators as a source. So I think we're getting closer to being able to rely on AI for basic math and counting. How do we avoid hallucinations? Now, there are a few ways that you can avoid these hallucinations, or at least decrease the probability that you'll get one. First of all, if you're asking anything related to current events, news, or anything requiring a source, the first place I go isn't ChatGPT or Claude. The first place I go is Perplexity. Perplexity is closer to a traditional Google search if you're researching, but with AI mixed in. It's going to give you a generated AI response, but it's also going to tell you the exact sources that it's using to get that information. So here's exactly how to use this. Instead of asking ChatGPT, what are the latest regulations in my industry? You can go to Perplexity and ask the same question. You'll get an AI-generated summary and clickable sources that you can verify. Then you can try asking a follow-up prompt. What sources support this claim? This forces the AI to show its work. So going back to my Hemingway example, when I wasn't sure about his connection to George Orwell, I asked Perplexity, did George Orwell and Ernest Hemingway ever meet? And if so, were they friends? So Perplexity was able to tell me that no, they likely were not friends and may have actually only met once. But not only did it do that, it also gave me sources for this information so that I could click through and read the sources myself. So I got a quick answer. No, they weren't buddies. And then I got clickable sources so I could go and dig deeper if I wanted to. Now, you can also do this outside of Perplexity within ChatGPT and Claude, and Google Gemini has actually started doing this automatically. But basically, you want to make sure that you have web search turned on so that the responses you're getting have sources linked to them. It's kind of cool. It's like when you're reading a book and there are footnotes and annotations, but you can actually click the little annotation and it will take you directly to the source. It opens up in a new tab. You can check it out. And this is where you would use your common sense, your expertise, and your judgment to decide if the sources it's giving you are reliable and relevant. And if not, you can push back and ask for better sources. It's something I teach. The women I work with in the Brand to Bot Blueprint, we're learning how to use AI as their strategic partner, not as a replacement for their expertise. There's another way that you can get around the hallucinations. Adobe Acrobat AI Assistant and Notebook LM by Google are both really great options if you need a self-contained system. So basically, you can upload a bunch of documents and then ask AI within these two systems to use only the information contained in those documents. So that way, you know you're not getting any hallucinations. It is only pulling data contained in those documents. And if it doesn't have the information you're asking for, it'll tell you. Here's exactly how to use Notebook LM. So let's say you're going to upload your industry reports, client contracts, research documents, and then ask, based on the documents I've uploaded, what are key trends that you're seeing in this industry? AI can only reference what you've given it, so you're eliminating the guesswork. Now, this is a huge benefit and a leg up on the other LLMs, which will confidently lie through their teeth just to make you happy. So with AI Assistant or Notebook LM, if it doesn't know or doesn't have access to that information based on what you've given it, it'll just tell you. Okay, so here's what we've talked about today. First, we discussed what hallucinations are and why they happen. It's not your fault, and the AI isn't dumb. It's just doing the best it can despite having never stepped foot out into the real world. We talked about the counting and the math issue and why that happens. And then I gave you some options to get better outputs using Perplexity, the web search function in ChatGPT and Claude, and then self-contained tools like Adobe Acrobat AI Assistant and Google's Notebook LM. So here are your takeaways. AI is an incredible tool, but it's not infallible. Your expertise, your real-world experience, your common sense, that's what makes you irreplaceable. And while your competitors are blindly just putting their inputs into AI and trusting their outputs, and potentially damaging their credibility by putting out things that aren't true, you are going to know exactly when to verify and how to use these tools strategically. If you're ready to learn how to use AI strategically in your business with your brand voice and your expertise leading the way, I'd love to help. Check out the Brand to Bot Blueprint, where we start with a crystal clear brand strategy before we ever build your first AI system. The link will be in the show notes, or you can go to aiqueens.com to learn more. And hey, if this episode helped you understand AI a little better, share it with another queen who needs to hear this. Until next time, keep questioning the robots and keep reigning over your business with AI.
Thanks for listening to the AI Queens podcast. If you loved today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a fellow queen who needs to hear this. Want more tips and tools? Join the AI Queens Society at aiqueenssociety.com and start ruling your business with confidence today. Until next time, stay bold, stay curious, and keep reigning with AI.